with different opinions and folks and concerns about everything going on. So we thought we'd want to have a discussion and share some different thoughts and ideas and have some things be part of this. Someone wanted to join. So we'll start with our agenda for tonight. So Pete is I'm going to turn over to Pete in just a minute as soon as I go through the agenda, who's going to do an introduction of what we're doing, how we're going to do it with the number of folks involved. We want to have discussion, we want to have people involved, so how we're going to do that as part of this. And then he's going to share some initial thoughts on, what is the Maryland Forward Party position on Trump, and kind of set up how we want to have this discussion. From that, then 3 of our members will share their thoughts. Trump's been in office for 2 months now. What do we think? What's going on with that? So Matthew Sampson's going to talk about finding ways to implement some ideas Trump has, but find fairness, humanity, and compassion in that implementation. Eamon Donovan's going to talk about, are we facing a constitutional crisis? And I haven't looked to see if Eamon's joined yet.
I do not see
Pete, as soon as I turn it over to you, I will ping Pete, Eamon, and make sure he's joining us. And then I'm going to talk about, is the continuing resolution that to keep the government from shutting down, the continuing resolution was passed, is that a victory? For each of those, we're going to share some thoughts, have some time for discussion and questions, and then make sure we get all 3 of these in. And then we're going to open the floor for more comments, questions about that. And then at the very end, I'll just talk about what our next meeting is going to be. So with that, Pete, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
All right. Sounds good. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to mine so that I can control the clicker.
Okay.
All right. So we should have, you should see the same thing over here. So basically, we are going to do a discussion through this. We want to hear from you. We want to model and practice this format that I'm going to introduce in just a few minutes, but we want to make sure that everybody knows how to do this. And so one of those things is involved with the hand icon down here. So please take a look at that right now and click on that hand icon and go ahead and raise your hands. So if everybody could just go ahead and click and raise your hands. We'll turn them all off again in just a moment, but I just want to make sure that everybody has the ability. They know how to do it, so they can figure this out. And I'm basically looking for anybody who doesn't have a raised hand. And so far, I think, so we've got a few more down here. So it looks like some of the hands may have, nope, separate. So I'm just run through real quick. Adam and Al and Austin and Courtney and Emily, Jim, Kathleen, Katie, Kristen, Kurt, Laura, Lee, Lori, Matt, Michael, both Michaels, Abrahams and Laughlin, Nancy, Roseanne, Scott, Steve, Talisha, and Veronica. Could you all click on that raise hand button there down at the bottom of the window? And if you can't see it or something's going on, let us know right now. Thank you, Courtney. Oh, we got a mix. All right, so we got a good mixture of things. All right, so we don't quite have everybody. We got a few hands that aren't up as well. So if you're not able to raise your hand or you're having some issues with that, go ahead and type inside of the chat, and somebody else here can help you to do this, because this is how we want to make sure that everybody can participate. So I just wanted to check on that first. All right, I'm going to go ahead and lower all the hands for now. Thank you, Steve. And thank you, Sue. All right. So our next slide here is, there's going to be a poll on here to take in our questions when we get to this point. So in the bottom right-hand corner, you should see an icon that kind of looks like 3 primary shapes there. And if you click on that, it'll take you to another menu. And inside of that menu, you're going to see a thing that says polls. And there are no polls right now, but I just want you to click on that try it, get to that place, and you should see a space where there are polls, and we'll make use of that later and come back to that. So anybody not see those icons or anybody not able to get into that we could maybe tackle real quick? Going once, going twice. Heading on. Okay, let's talk about how we talk about Trump. We have a specific format that we have been working.
Pete, if I could jump in just a second, a couple of folks have said they've got some audio problems. Is that still a problem? Or are folks able to hear okay? Assuming that's okay, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So talking about Trump is a very complex process. Let's just put it that way. We've been practicing talking about Trump for several years now. In the lead up to the election, we've come up with some great ways to have a conversation around the things that are happening, as well as the other stuff that or stuff that's happening now. Since then, we're going to show you one of the techniques that we worked out that has been very helpful for us for a very particular reason, and I'm going to go through why I think that is a very particular reason. But we wanted to start off with what is our position as the Maryland Forward Party on Trump specifically. Now, one of the things that we did is we went through and we wanted to create a reasoned response, so that, because Trump can be very emotional for many different reasons. So it brings up a lot of emotions in people all across the spectrum. And we wanted to make sure that we were giving a reasoned response. And we went back to our candidate pledge. So we put this together. It wasn't just about Trump. It wasn't about Trump at all. It was about stuff in general. You can go to our website. You can look at our candidate pledge. Everybody that we support has to sign this pledge and commit to follow it, as well as the directors on our board of directors have to follow this. And so we wrote an article back in July of 2024, talking about who we suggest that you vote for, or how we suggest that you, really more how you think about voting. And we broke this down into basically our different pieces here. So our candidate pledge requires a commitment to transparency and public disclosures. And that was not something that Trump was doing. And so therefore we did not support him for that reason. He actually was taken to court and convicted for this particular line reason. And so we followed the conviction. And so that guided a lot of what we were doing. Practicing grace and tolerance is not something that's his strong suit. So that was another reason why we were not recommending that people vote for Trump. Encouraging diverse thinking is also an issue that he does not take regularly. Committing to a culture that celebrates difference and rejects hatred and removes barriers is also in our candidate pledge, not something that he matches to. Supporting all Marylanders and avoiding all acts of dehumanization was another one of these things. So these were there are more points to our candidate pledge than are listed here. But these are the main reasons that we could go back to and point and say why we are not supporting Trump as an official position within the Maryland Forward Party. But that doesn't really fully address how do we talk to other people about Trump. So we can make this position, we can talk about the reasons why we take this position, but talking about Trump is very hugely and largely emotional. And a lot of people have a variety of different takes and opinions across the spectrum, and it can really get people's emotions up. So how you talk about this topic can really make a huge difference in the outcomes of all of those conversations that you may be having, and that we will definitely be having with the community around us. So the first thing that we wanted to offer you as some tips for talking about Trump is to be careful not to debate on other people's terms. And so one of the solutions that we have for this, one of the recommendations we have, is to actually stay away from debating policy positions and debating solutions. We're going to show you what you can do instead that offers a better way to have a conversation with somebody and why. So instead of that, we want to think about the problems that should be solved. So for everything that comes up, everybody's trying to solve some kind of particular problem with what they're doing. So even all the stuff that Trump is doing, even all the stuff that Elon is doing, even everybody, all the things that are happening, there are reasons why they are doing what they are doing, and those are reasons that some people in the United States agree with. So if we go for the conversation about those reasons, we can actually get into a different level of conversation than if we just focus on their actions. And so anytime you come up with a bad policy position that you dislike, one of the techniques that you can use is to separate that policy idea from the problem that it's trying to solve. So we can go from a bad policy decision that you don't like and extract out the popular problem that's connected with that. And that can find a way that we can have a connection to a potential supporter and hopefully try to win them over and away from backing a bad policy to being able to look at other different options that are there. And this goes back to the technology adoption life cycle, the crossing the chasm from the book by Jeffrey Moore that we talked about last month. So if you didn't see last month's video, you might go check it out on our YouTube channel and get into more details about this. You may have also seen this in other places, but essentially there are different stages. I'm not going to break down all the various different stages. Please go watch the February all hands meeting for more details on this. Bill did a great breakdown of the various different components and where we are. And one of the things that we came up with is that there is this thing called the early majority. And the early majority is the majority of the crowd that's out there. So you can see there's a lot of folks out there. So there's a temptation to want to go and talk to a lot of those people who are in the early majority. But those people don't really want to listen to us. They belong to a team. They belong to a group. They often have some very specific opinions about what things are. And you can start to notice a difference between those types of people versus what we call the early adopters. And the early majority isn't really going to follow us at this stage. We're too early in the realm for forward. We are looking at tackling the early adopters, at talking to those folks, defining those folks. And it's the early adopters who work with us through the forward party that will then be able to change the early majority's opinion. So it's kind of important to understand some of the concepts here and how to reach and find those early adopters, and not waste our time too much on the early majority for now. That's a thing that's going to happen a little bit later. So what I want to propose to you is that our goal is really to find the problem solvers around us. There are some people who did vote for Trump because there is certain information they had access to and other information that they didn't have access to. Now, there are some people who voted for Trump because they're passionate and they're all in on the Trump vision. There's a difference between somebody who is rationally thinking about something and has a portion of the information versus somebody who's not rationally thinking about something, who's just following the social media and just following the arena that they live in executing on that. And the people in that latter category are those early majority, and they're not going to listen to us. But how do we find those people who are missing half the picture, and that's the reason why they voted for Trump? This also works on the Democratic side. So there are a bunch of people who are going out on a regular basis and filling out petitions and making calls and attending protests. And those actions have zero impact on actually doing the things that they think is going to happen. And there are some people who are out there who are going to do those actions regardless of whether or not it changes the outcome. And then there are going to be some of those people who think about, how do I really counter Trump? How do I really change the bad policies that I don't agree with? And we're looking for that latter category. So again, we're looking for the rational people, no matter where they are on the spectrum. They could also be in the Greens. They could also be in the Libertarians. They could be in a variety of different places. But you're going to find that these people are frustrated with the current system. And it's not very different than this idea of living in the matrix. So I just pulled that image here to kind of think about this. So we're looking for those people who are willing to take that red pill and dive deeper. And those are the people who are willing to have some reasoned conversation with us, regardless of whether or not they agree. What we're looking for is their desire to have a reasoned conversation about what's going on. So here are 4 steps that you can take to go through this. I'm going to walk through the steps, show you how they work. Then we're going to do a Q&A on this. And then we're going to hand it off to Matt, followed by Eamon, and followed by Bill. And we're going to take a couple topics here and simulate this and practice this. And that's where we're going to use the raised hands and the questions and all the things like that. So the first step is to separate that problem out. And I wanted to pull an example from this. And so I grabbed this thing of Doge. So Doge, of course, is named Doge because of the cryptocurrency. And so this was a nod to Elon so that he could have something that is special to him. But why is it called Doge? Why is it the Department of Government Efficiency? It could have been anything for those last 2 words. Department of makes sense. You can build Doge as an acronym out of a lot of different things. The key to all of this and to what they're doing and to what we have to do at the same time is understanding why is it government efficiency. And if you haven't gotten to this place already, it's because everybody across the entire spectrum has their own version and their own problem with government waste. And this is a big problem. It's an extensive problem. There's many different aspects of it. We may think about different aspects of government waste, but we all agree that there is government waste, and we all agree that there's something we should do about government waste. So that becomes the first step of the process. So instead of talking about Doge, instead of talking about a bunch of the things that Doge is doing and that Elon is doing, if you can shift the conversation to talking about government waste, you can, 1, start to make a connection with the other person that you're talking to, and you can take it out of their terms of discussion and turn it into your terms of discussion or our terms of discussion. So the second thing that we recommend is to take this into a comparison place. So often what happens is that when we try to take one problem and solve one problem at a time, solving that problem can make other problems worse or create brand new problems. And so a single problem solution is usually actually a very dangerous thing. And we see this in not only in politics, but in business and personal and a variety of different things. And usually when we run into this place, people are more in conflict in sort of their policy decisions because they're trying to solve different problems. So a better conversation topic, instead of, I don't like that policy, I don't like that decision that Doge made, that Elon made, is to instead talk about what got worse because of the choices that Elon made. What got worse because of the choices that Trump is making, and start to put these into a context. What are some of the problems that people that we should not make worse when we're trying to solve government waste? We want to solve government waste. Connect with the other people on that, but ask them, what are some of those other problems that you think are more important? What should we not make worse? And this gets into a technique that we use called prioritized epic problems. And it basically goes through this process. This is how we form a lot of our decisions on. We actually use this process to figure out how to write that article. We went through a whole process like this to figure out actually what the words were going to be on that article about our support or our recommendations for voting in the 2024 election. But what happens when you ask this question about comparing problems back and forth is you start to find those people who are willing to have a discussion with you and start to debate things back and forth. You're going to find the people who are able to think critically and are going to then supply reasons as to why they think this problem of government waste maybe is more important than another problem that you offer. So we suggest you to come in and think of some other different problems which are made worse by solving government waste, and then start having a debate with them about the problems instead of about the solutions. Step 3, once you get them talking about comparative problems, is to then ask about evidence. So instead of asking about, is this the right thing to do versus the wrong thing to do, ask them, how would you know? So you think that this problem is more important than this one, or you think that this policy that Elon's doing right now, or that the Trump or Democrats or the Congress or these different divisions are doing right now to make this problem go away. How would you know if it actually went away? They don't have to actually be able to give you an answer. What we want to do is to get people to think about how they would go out and collect that information and start to pull some of that information. You can offer some ideas that you might have as to how you would measure this problem, or what you would expect to see if this problem went away, or if this solution was actually being useful or not. And that leads us to step number 4, which is how you can start to build a connection with people. If you build a connection as a follow-up to say, you know, hey, like, I don't know really how to solve this, or maybe they're talking about, I don't know what that evidence is to show whether or not this is a useful policy or a bad policy, then follow up with them and say, you know, hey, if I can keep in contact with you, I'm going to go do some research. I'll send you what I find. Can you send me what you find? And when you get emails back from people who are willing to go out and do some research about the problems and the comparative value of the problems, what you're finding is you are identifying those people who are critical thinkers and who really care about what's going on, and are willing to put in a little bit of extra work, and who aren't just going to make quick decisions based on emotions. So this is why we like this technique and this option here, because this 4-step process gets us through the different ways of identifying the problem solvers among us and being able to have more rational conversations, which is not something that happens very frequently these days. All right, so that is the presentation of the techniques that we've been using in prototyping and using over the past year or so. And I'll go ahead and open up the floor right now for any questions that people might have. And give it a little bit of a time box of about 5 minutes or so. And then we'll move on to another simulation, and I'll hand it off to Matt so we can start talking about some of the one of the problem ideas that he brought in. So go ahead and raise your hand, click that raised hand button there, and get in the list if you want to ask a question. All right, Laura is first.
Hi, so this might be a pretty basic question, but you were just saying you've been working on this technique for maybe the past year. Have you found it successful, or what other obstacles have you, has anything unique really come out of it from your perspective?
Yeah, it has been very, very helpful. So I brought over this technique from my day job and the work that I do. And I do consulting in large organizations, and I've had to use this in places where the leaders of the organization don't even agree with each other. And so the teams have no hope of being able to figure out what's the path forward. And so we've been able to have these conversations about problems and work things out. But in the political sense, we've had some great responses. We started with doing some things amongst our own. I think one of the best examples that I've seen was Baltimore had a change to their constitution, or a change to their process. It was called Question H, and it was on the ballot in November. And people came to us and they asked us these questions. They're like, basically, will you join us in opposing Question H? And we were like, well, we don't actually understand Question H just yet, and we'd like to know more. Can we run this type of debate with you and a panel with a bunch of different folks and find out more about this, and then provide a resource that people could watch and find out more about the issue and help decide for themselves of what they wanted to do. And it started off, if you watch the video, which you can on our YouTube channel, go search for Maryland Forward Party and Question H or something like that. You'll see in like the first 15 or 30 minutes, we had a bipartisan panel and some independents in the middle. And they started off with the barbs. They had their talking points. They were taking pot shots at each other. They were calling each other names, and they were. It was not starting off really great, but we stuck to our format. And then about 15 to 30 minutes in, you started hearing this response of like, "Well, I don't agree with everything that you're saying, but that's a really good point." And then about 30 to 45 minutes in, they were like, that's one thing about this is like I wasn't expecting to come here and have this kind of a discussion, but I really like that new point that you just made about what we should do. And by the end of the 90-minute segment, they had already kind of decided that this was not the thing to pass for right now. There was a much better way to solve these problems. And the entire panel was collaborating together on writing out the wording for the next thing that they would put up in front that would actually solve the more important problems than the one that the original proposal was there. And that's what was so powerful about that. And that's kind of why we do that is it doesn't matter if people want to participate. If you use the format, you will find the people, it'll bring out the best qualities, and they will start to collaborate whether they want to or not. All right. Any other questions? Rachel.
So I don't have my video on because I'm driving, but I can hear you.
Great.
Have you shared these techniques with other forward parties beyond Maryland?
Yes. Have they picked them up and started using them? No.
Okay, yes, you just hey, thank you. That's what I wanted to know, really.
Yeah. I think
okay.
Nobody is used to debating in this different way. And so we're finding some use of it. I mean, the introduction here. So since I'll admit I'm the one who brought it over from my workday world. And it took a while to introduce it to the folks just in the Maryland Forward Party and get them to try it out and see how it goes. And after they saw it, then they're like, well, okay, well, let's try it out with some other groups. And we ran a couple pilots with a couple different issues in a couple different places. And it takes a while for people to learn anything new and adapt it and get into it. I recommend go and watch the video, give it a try, test it out for yourself. That's what we're going to do for the rest of this session here is give a chance to do some practicing so that you can start to get a feel for it. And I mean, hopefully everybody gets to do this for a while because we find that it does have much better results.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we better move on. We've only got so much time. We'll stick around to answer some more questions towards the end of the session. And PJ, I think at this point you might have wanted to jump in there. Are you available or free to be able to say a few words?
Yeah, I just wanted to say hi to everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. You guys could be anywhere else tonight. You decided to join us. So we really appreciate you being here. I'm PJ Beninati, the state chair of the Maryland Forward Party. And I want to just thank the team that's leading the conversation tonight too. I was one of the skeptics early on with this format of discussion, and it took me a couple times to see how to apply it. And now I think it's an integral part of who we are and how we can make a difference in our communities. So I just want to thank everybody for joining us tonight.
All right, we do have a couple hands up. I'm looking at the clock. Is it a quick question? I'll ask Michael and Veronica. If it's a quick question, otherwise, if it's a longer question, I'd like to come back to it when we get towards the end of the session. Okay, Michael's good. Veronica, quick question or longer question? And you're on mute, Veronica. I can see that you're talking, but
Okay, I'll ask a quick question. Does this process that you're outlining, does it have some kind of name that like we could go look up on the outside on the internet and learn about this process from other sources?
the prominent name is like Pep Talk. You may not find too much content about it out there. It's not a very dispersed or prominent technique. But it's just more about prioritizing problems. But it's based on some concepts out of, if you want to look at things like design thinking, lean startup. What's another good thing? So it's those things are more prominent. It has to do a lot with customer research and how to talk with people. So that might give you a couple other places to take a look at.
Thanks.
And Veronica, I see you're off mute.
Yes, I found the button. You're listed 4 steps. I understand the first, second, third step. The 4th step, why does it have to be such a negative that it's the connection is a distrust in politicians? Why wouldn't it be a connection of mutual agreement, or why does it have to be negative?
Really good question. If you can connect with the person around agreement, great. You know,
But you're saying agreement in the distrust.
I know,
Agreed
yes.
Distrust.
It's just one of the things that we've found that has been the most activating. And you know, if you can find a connection with people around positive stuff, go for it. I would, recommend the centering it around that idea of collecting evidence and passing some good ideas back and forth. But one of the things that we've seen a lot in the last election, and that rides really high in the polls. So between Trump and even the Democratic Congress and Elon, the distrust, the against numbers in the polls are really, really high, and the trust numbers on the polls are really, really low. So as a general thing, that's a thing that we might be able to find connection with people that might entice them to get into a rational conversation with us. So that's why I put that one there.
Veronica, just as an example to it, you could substitute out distrust for politicians for any problem. I think the idea is you come together and connection on a common problem together. You can pick whatever problem that is. That could be immigration. It could be the price of medicine and prescription drugs.
Well,
you come out with an agreement on the problem.
I can understand that, but I think that our society is so distrustful of everything now that it's like making a mob together to hate something. I'm sorry, that's just what I think.
No, I get where you're going.
Pete, I think
let's do some practice with some of the simulations here and talk about some of the issues. And maybe what you'll see is that as we go into some of these things, we're going to we actually do get around to very positive conversations as a result. All right, Matt. Shall I hand off? Do you want to do screen share or you want me to continue clicking?
You can continue clicking.
All right.
All right. So my thought in everything is that we need to find a way to connect with each other, like you just been saying. I think finding our humanity is the most important thing, because a lot of times we're talking to each other behind the screen, behind a keyboard, and we're not treating everyone we're talking about as real people. And there's a saying that I've heard is the biggest divide in Washington was caused by the jet engine, which is really like people are not connecting together in Washington, like hanging out, having lunch, having dinner, and just being together. Some of the best moments I've seen throughout history and with politicians is one side shaking hands with the other, solving something that benefits everyone. Like when the governor from New Jersey shook hands with Obama, that was a good moment because it was bringing people together to solve a problem for natural disasters. And I would have loved to see, like, even Trump coming up and meeting and shaking hands with other politicians from the other side. And that would have been a great moment to see. And that would actually help build trust in everyone too. Now, I love ideas, people, and talking to Pete and Bill, I'm sure they'll agree. I have a lot of ideas, but I don't have a lot of solutions. So I can slate a lot of problems. And that's what Trump has done. He's slated a lot of problems that need fixing, and I can appreciate that. And I just don't think that we need to go in with a cleaver and just slash everything, because the way I look at it is we have friends, we have neighbors, we have family that are all affected by this. And so when we know these things, these harsh cuts and everything, it's like we know our friends and family didn't deserve this kind of treatment. We know they did a good job at their job. So we're trying to look for answers of like, well, what's the meaning behind this? I get that there's a lot of waste in government. There's no one that would argue that. Everyone believes there's a lot of waste in government. And I really think that's great how much Trump has focused on that and brought it to light. But if we showed our compassion towards how we solve a problem, I think we're going to get to a place where everyone's going to be on board. Everyone's going to agree. And I just wish that we could somehow just treat everything that's happening as if it was our friends and neighbors. Because really, everyone in this country is trying to work together to make it a successful country. But I run a Mingle thing because I follow Michael Smerconish, and his whole passion project is about mingling, getting together, finding common solutions, and just getting to know the humanity of each person. So that's the goal that I'm trying to forward. I don't care about like disagreeing on things. We can all disagree on things, but knowing that worrying about things that affect everyone that around you is what we need to care about most, and that's what I hope to focus on.
All right. So if we were talking about how to be humane, if we were talking about better ways to tackle this, talk about our neighbors, for example, raise your hands. And in this place where Matthew is talking about, what are some other problems that are being made worse by these cuts that are being done? So what are some other problems that you see? Go ahead and click that hand and get in the queue. And we'll basically run down that list from the queue. Bill.
So
what did
one of the things that I think is being worse is with the just blanket taking people with the probationary status, people who are just promoted, our best and brightest, okay, are being let go just because the promotion caused them to have that status. So we're not picking the people who aren't carrying their weight. We're getting rid of some of our best people.
All right, some of our best and brightest are being let go. Laura, I see your hand is up. What's a problem that you think is being made worse by trying to solve government waste in this way? And you're on mute right now.
Thank you. Click the wrong button. I think, you know, civil servants and other people who have really dedicated their lives are in a position now where they're questioning, you know, the integrity of government, right? Because they're feeling very jerked around and not respected, right? So somebody who's dedicated quite a bit of time and believed in government is now starting to question why they've even been in this position if it's not all that important. And then suddenly it is important, and they come back and then they get another letter saying you might get cut. So it's just a lot of flip-flopping.
All right. Do you think that is a bigger problem than the best and brightest being let go?
No.
Or do you think that is a lower problem? Okay.
I think it's a lower problem. I think it's almost more of an outcome of number one in some ways. Right.
Gotcha. All right. Yes. All right. So I'll kind of write it that way. All right. Next hand up in the list. There's the queue. Rachel. And then Steve after that.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding this right, because I think mine might be more of how it's being done than what's being done. Because as we've seen, literally the wrong people are fired. So I don't know how to explain that or how to prioritize that, but literally it could even say essential employees. Not even best and brightest, but literally essential employees are being accidentally or incorrectly gotten rid of. So make that sound right.
I think sounds like a good problem statement to me. The wrong
Okay.
people are being fired, you know, and that's good clarification that you're talking about essential employees that we really need to do important jobs.
Who have to be brought back again.
Yeah. Okay. And I think you're right. It's kind of similar to this one, so we could even like merge these together a little bit. But there is a distinction between the two of them. All right, who's next in the list? Steve, and then Anna or Anna.
Yeah, what I just want to say is that, you know, if you take the problem 1, 2, and 3 and 4, what's really happening is that in trying to reduce waste and improve efficiency, you're actually making waste worse and the government more inefficient. Okay, so in the end, your problem number 4 becomes, you know, even a bigger problem because of the way that you actually try to solve the issue. Okay, so I think that, you know, that we haven't seen the full effect of that yet, but you know, when people start not receiving the Social Security checks, or that people don't get their refund on the tax return and so forth, you know, then we find out that the government has become actually more inefficient and more wasteful.
Yes, and I would point out that there's a slight but important difference between having a debate on somebody about, you know, Elon shouldn't have fired all of the air traffic controllers, to Elon firing the air traffic controllers has now created more waste than there might have been there in the first place. And that's actually a more powerful thing to have a conversation about in this space. And so you can turn around this thing. They're trying to solve government waste. Bill said this about several things. They're trying to solve government waste in some of the worst ways possible. And that might actually be a better conversation topic. Next up in the list is Anna, and then Michael.
Hi, hello everybody. Nice to meet you. My perspective is from my profession, which I've always worked in agriculture. And one of the things I'm really worried about is that, agriculture was something that a lot of older people had gained a lot of expertise in over the years. And then there was some time that the profession of agriculture wasn't necessarily that sexy, that attractive to folks. And then it's recently started to be so as people started to be more concerned with climate change and sustainability. So then we have kind of this, mixed batch of talent, because we have the older folks who are about to retire and about to take a lot of knowledge with them on agriculture. And then we had some rising younger people who were hopefully going to learn from them and be able to move into those positions slowly as people retired. And then there was this middle that there weren't so many people that were attracted to the profession in that time, that it wasn't so attractive. And so what I'm worried about is, 4 years, that's almost half a decade. And then if we let go a lot of these people, we are going to find ourselves in a position that we have a lot of knowledge that is lost through that generational transition. And then because they weren't able to rise up through, by advancing in their career. Or honestly, when it comes to this, the scientific side, it's going to be where I feel like we're going to experience a lot of brain drain, and people will look abroad. Canada, I know, is already offering to recruit a lot of people. And so that's really worrying to me. And then the other side that's really worrying to me is the U.S. extension system, the way that we do it with between USDA, land grant universities, and extensionists that work with farmers is kind of the pride and joy that is envied around the world when it comes to extension, and how responsive that kind of three pillar system works. And by eliminating a lot of those jobs and eliminating a lot of funding towards universities that work directly to address the problems, whether it's a new pest, whether it's a new disease, whether it's a new stress on crops, they always work on that under university funding, federal funding. That's going to be lost, and so that's another challenge. And then the other major one is more for the private side.
Actually, if I can pause you there, so I didn't put this in the rules. I'm sort of adding these after the fact, but I want to make a suggestion as you're doing this. There's a thing called chaining. So there's one thing about our way that our brains work, whereas we're thinking about one thing, it reminds us of the next one, reminds of the next one.
Mhm.
And it's very tempting to go from this topic to this topic to this topic, but it actually makes it a little bit harder for us to have a good discussion.
Okay.
So one of the things that we do in this technique, which I didn't share before, but I'm going to share right now, is that we want to hear all of them. But one of the best things you can do is talk about one and then come back later in the conversation and then add the second one, and then come back later and add the third. And that can actually give much more robust conversations, because people want to respond to your first one already. And then as you go in the second and the third one, they start to lose their place.
Okay, great. So I'll stop here then.
Cool. Bill, you are next up. We got a bunch of hands up. I want to give you the option. We could pause this conversation and switch over to the one that you're talking about, or we could keep going on just this one as an example. What would you want to do? Do you want to give them a new topic as an example, or do you want to keep going on this one?
I think we only have one other topic because Eamon wasn't able to join us tonight. So let's do the second topic, and pride of authorship, it's mine. And then we can, come back and talk about both of them.
Sounds good. It's a good thing. So let's go ahead so we're going to hand it over to Bill. I'm going to go ahead and lower the hands for right now. Write down notes of what you're going to talk about if you think you might forget them. We're going to do the same thing with Bill's topic that he brings up. And then if you can stick around after 8 o'clock, we'll keep going and give ourselves a chance to have more practice and sort of talk about this stuff and go through the different pieces of it. All right, go for it, Bill.
You jump back to the slides?
Sure can.
So Congress passed a continuing resolution, and there was lots of, thank God, we haven't shut down. But I have a lot of concerns with many of Trump's executive orders and other actions, but I put most of the blame on the situation we face now on Congress. one of the powers that the Constitution gives to Congress is to define the budget for the federal government. So could you click, Pete?
Mm-hmm.
So Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7 says, no money shall be withdrawn from the Treasury, but in consequences of appropriations made by law. Only Congress passes law. And a regular statement and account of the receipts and expenditures of all public money shall be published from time to time. So Congress is expressly charged with passing a federal budget that defines what money can be spent and what it can be spent on. Since 1977, Congress has fulfilled this constitutional requirement on time. The start of the government fiscal year is September 1st of each year. Since 1977, they've done that 3 times. And the last time was in 1997. For all the other 43 years, Congress has passed a continuing resolution, or CR, instead of a full year's budget. In many of those years, it passed multiple CRs for different time periods. We had 3 this year. The press and Congress always positions this as an alternative between a CR and a shutdown, and a CR is a victory. Well, a CR is absolutely preferable to shutting down the government, but it's not a victory. CRs are a major contributor to the waste that we have in the government, and I'm just going to talk for a minute about 2 of the ways that that happens. The first way is caused by what the requirements a CR puts on an agency. The one that gets the attention is they have to use the same budget as last year. We're in fiscal year 2025, and agencies are limited to their 2024 budget amounts. But we're a continuing resolution for the whole year. So we get into 2027, 2026, okay? If there's any continuing resolution, if on August 31st we don't have a budget, okay, then a continuing resolution is passed, and we're still working with 2024 budgets 2 years ago. More importantly, the CR also mandates that agencies continue to do what they've been doing and not start anything new. Most agencies have very old systems that are not efficient and are very expensive to support. To buy modern technology to replace those systems, Congress requires agencies to follow the Federal Acquisition Regulations, affectionately known as the FAR, a book about over an inch thick of fine print requirements. The FAR has very detailed processes that an agency must follow to get the internal approvals for any major investment, like modernizing key internal systems. And it can often take a year or longer to go through all the approvals that are necessary to be able to issue an RFP to ask for proposals to get a new system. Once that RFP is issued, vendors need to respond to that. And then there's a whole detailed process of evaluating those proposals to determine which one should be the winner. That usually takes another year. But under a CR, an agency is not even allowed to issue the RFP for anything new. They have to continue what they've been doing. RFPs for any new systems that were budgeted and planned for 2025 now can't be issued until 2026 at the earliest, and only if the budget in 2026 allows for them to be purchased. If we have a CR for more than a month or 2 in 2026, then the RFPs can be issued, but they can't be awarded until 2027. And if we have a CR in 2027, they can't be awarded until that CR is discontinued. So what we're doing is forcing the old systems to be continued over and over and over again. And these systems are very inefficient, require a lot of manual work that modern systems do automatically, and their technology is very expensive to support. All this waste is caused by Congress's inability to pass a budget for each fiscal year and just kicking the can down the road with CRs and then declaring that a victory. The second way we have enormous waste, the federal budget requires, with very few exceptions like building a new aircraft carrier, the money in the budget for a fiscal year has to be spent in that fiscal year and can't be carried over to another year. If all the money in the budget line item is not spent, it's lost. And when Congress goes to look at the next year's budget, if this year the budget was $20 million, but some agency only spent 16 for that line item, and Congress said, well, 16 is the most they need. We're not going to give them any more than that, maybe less. So there's a penalty to not spend the money because you're looking at a budget cut for the next year. What this has done is create a behavior that's called use it or lose it. managers will walk down the halls in the last few months of the years calling out, I got $1 million. Can anybody spend it? And if somebody can come up with that as a way to spend that money, then they've spent their full budget and they have a much better chance of getting that same budget next year. So the reward is to buy something. But if that something isn't terribly useful, if it sits on the shelf and is never used, but they spent their budget. So the reward is to buy something, even if you don't need it. And the penalty is to be a good, and if you don't need it, don't spend the money. That's what Congress has forced agencies to do as part of this. And the CR makes it even worse. For most, let's take an example. An agency had, most of their desktop computers are 3 or 4 years old, and they were able to get in the next year's budget, instead of a $16 million budget, a $20 million budget to replace those computers. But that budget wasn't approved at the start of the fiscal year. They did a 6-month CR. So for those 6 months, the agency has to work with their $16 million budget until the new budget is passed. But in 6 months, lo and behold, Congress does finally pass that. And the agency spent $8 million of the $16 million. But now they only have 6 months to spend $12 billion because all that money, extra money, rolls in there. So the use it or lose it gets worse and worse and worse. In some years, the CR is, the final budget is passed with 2 or 3 months, and everything has to happen in those couple of months. That's what the CR does for us to create enormous waste. These are not agencies' problems. They don't want to do this. These are the laws Congress has passed regarding continuing resolutions, regarding federal acquisitions, and what needs to be done. These are wasting enormous amount of money. If we can click one more time. One more. Congress has an approval rating of 30% and a re-election rate of 94%. Okay? We need them to do a better job. If I had a vote for how would improve waste, it would be Trump sit down with Congress and let's look at these laws and do something that makes sense, and how to operate under a continuing resolution if Congress continues to fail to do their job, and not have these continued use it or lose it and other problems that the laws require agencies to do. So that's my thought.
All right. We are at 8:01. How about we do this, Bill? Let's go ahead and talk about what's going to happen or what's coming up next. And then let's come back and talk about your conversations. Does that sound good?
Okay. So very quickly, we've got 2 alternatives for our meeting next month. One is to keep going with what we have here, one or more of the ideas that we've had interest and lots of people commenting on, and really drill down to it, let Pete go through this process and explore things further. Option 2 is we've put together and done in one instance where it was very well received. This is a 1-hour session of Election Reforms 101, a basic class on that of, what are the 4 election reform priorities, what problem needs to be fixed, what do we recommend as a way of fixing it, and what are the folks who don't like it, what are they saying about it? So if we want to really drill down more on this, we could slide that out to May or June, or if folks rather get into that. So I'm looking for some feedback as to what would be, we want to do a continued drill down on the really good discussion we've had so far, or do we want to do the other one? So do you want to do a survey or raise hands, Pete? How do you want to get a vote on this?
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and create a survey real quick. All right, so we're going to do prioritized epic problems. And the other option is going to be Election Reforms 101. And so you can only choose one option. Can't choose both. All right. Okay, launching the poll. So again, if you click in the bottom right-hand corner on the little icon, it's like the diamond and the triangle, or not the triangle, the circle and the square, you should be able to see the polls in there, and then you should be able to click on that and vote in this poll. Clicking to show the results. Oh, we're tied right now. So anybody who votes, okay, we just broke the tie. Oh, we're back to a tie. Oh, it's the 3 dots first if you're on mobile. Thanks, Mike. And then it's in the mobile, that menu on the mobile. All right. Going once. It's pretty close. Anybody wants to weigh in the last minute? We got 13 votes in here. Going once. Going twice. Last call. Ending the poll. All right, so we had 15 votes. Squeaked through with Election Reforms 101 for 8 votes. And Prioritize Problems for 7 votes. But obviously, these are both things that we want to talk about. And I wish we had a multi-choice, or I just don't know how to do the polls for multi-choice. And because I bet if we did ranked choice voting between these options, we might have gotten a different result. But we can talk about that next month. All right.
Just before we, just while we have everybody, and we do want to be respectful of everybody's time. So, if anybody does need to hop off, we just want to thank you for joining us tonight. Anybody who wants to stay on for a few more minutes, I think we can have a continual conversation here, maybe open it up to the floor a little bit more, get some more feedback. But for anybody who does need to hop off, we appreciate you guys coming in tonight, and reach out. Feel free to ping any one of us if you have questions or thoughts that you want to share. We'll talk more soon.
Or you can reach out to Bill. We'll get you connected to anybody if you want to talk to anybody. So there's his phone number and his email address. And the slides for tonight are already in the chat. And then we'll send a follow-up to the invitation with the link to the slides if you want to have those.
Yeah, I'll be sending to all of you. I'll be sending
Thanks,
a link to the recording and also include a copy of the slides in there for you.
All right. Lee, did you have a thing that you wanted to do on follow-up, or were you going to talk about Bill's issue?
Well, I think we can tie it all together, because I think Bill did a really good job of describing the answer to the question. But DOGE, is supposed to be the Department of Government Efficiency. They're going about they're going on their way without understanding what the inefficiencies are or what the waste is. Now, Bill has pointed out, because Bill, was your background working in the government or as a contractor?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, me too. I was a contractor. The people who know where the waste and the inefficiencies are the government employees. And DOGE has indiscriminately, decimated that workforce. So the whole thing is extremely self-defeating. And now if you're talking about an issue like this with somebody, and you're trying to bring them aboard, you can get to that point, and then you can ask them, so what do you think the answer is? And as Bill says, it's the Congress. The Congress hasn't done its job, and they don't want to do their job. And why is that? It's because of there are only 35 seats in the House that are in play. And so what's the answer to that? Well, it's things that the Ford Party espouses are those 3 things: independent redistricting commissions, single primaries, and ranked choice voting, to get people in the government, or to get people in the Congress who actually want to govern. So I think you can get people by using the beginning of your process to that point and talk about the Ford Party.
Yep.
I think, Lee, we can also, as voters, when we go to the ballot, to cast our ballot in 2026 and 2028, we should know, do those candidates, have they supported a bipartisan effort to pass a budget and to do something? Or have they just been doing whatever, the other party says, I'm going to vote against because they said it? and we're just going to continue to operate on a continuing resolution. Let's vote those people out of office, okay?
Yeah.
And get sensible people in there.
Yeah, and that's the way we do it, is those three items, those three pillars. That's the best suggestion anybody's come up with. And so I think that they're concrete actions that would result in a different population in Congress.
Yep. All right, Bill, can you give me a summary problem or of your list of the things that you talked about? What's your most important problem that you listed that's being made worse by the way that they're choosing to tackle government waste right now?
Significant government waste is caused by congressional mandates.
Okay. Yeah, government mandates. Okay. So let's go ahead, and for anybody who wants to continue talking about this topic, you can put your hands up. We'll call on folks in order. Steve, I think I saw that you had raised your hand and then it went back down again. Okay. All right. Thanks for being here, Rachel. All right. Well, I don't see any hands, so we can open it up a little bit further. So if anybody wants to talk, beyond this issue about the technique, or we can talk about anything at this point. So if you have any thoughts or questions to wrap us up, go ahead and raise your hand. All right, Bill, what was your thought there? Then we'll go down to.
I think given the number of folks who were interested in doing this further, ask folks to respond back either in chat, emails to me or whatever, on, what would be one or more interesting topics in a future meeting, that we could drill down and have some more discussion. We had a great discussion around that first one that Matthew presented. I kind of almost feel guilty that we didn't just continue there. But, let's take that idea and that enthusiasm and structure, maybe our May meeting around that and a great discussion we can have. So please get your thoughts back to me on, what are problems that you'd like to really have us have a good discussion about.
All right. Anna.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I saw the three pillars of the party consolidated as collaboration, what was it? The collaboration, execution, or governance, and then a third one. And I was just wondering, are those nationwide, or is that specifically for your chapter?
Let me show you a couple things just so we know. So we have our own platform locally, and then there is a national version of it. So let me show you nationals first. So they have a section up here. They have their values. So getting into a couple of things, there's the values. They've got about a variety of 9 different things they're going through. So that's where they are sort of setting and following up on. We found that we had better, more focused conversations about some things that we were doing in state. So we kind of refined this a little bit further. And so this is the first pass at our new focus here. And so you'll find this up on our Maryland Forward Party website if you go under the About and Organizational Platform. And this, you'll see that we have here a couple of values: more collaboration, less partisan conflict, better governance through problem solving, protecting the rights of all people. These 3 things, Forward National is also all about that. But as you see, they decided to put it in terms of like the 9, the different squares up there. We decided to get a little bit more focused here on these 3 things. We felt that this kind of was a better talking point for us, gave our conversations more focus. And then we do break it down here into actions that we're taking as a result of these three concepts. So that's kind of how we do it. We're not separate from Forward Party, but it's just a different way of talking about the same values. All right, I see Steve's hand is up next.
Yeah, so I'd like a clarification on the step 4 of your PEP process. I think step 1, 2, and 3 are pretty clear. We spoke about step 4 in connection with the issue of distrust of politician. What I'm want to understand better is what is the actual goal of step 4 because of the process, because it says establish a connection, but you know what is the connection for, and where does it lead, and what's the actual deliverable, so to speak? Is it the connection? Is it something else?
Gotcha. Yeah, and obviously up front, thank you for everybody for the feedback on this to help get to find some better ways to talk about this. But yeah, let's cut right through it, which is that the evidence is the most important thing. If you can get to them talking about evidence through a shared distrust, that's what's written here. If you can get to that about evidence through a positive association and you both agree on this and you really want to dive into the details on it, great, go for that version of things. What we're trying to tackle, if I were to put this in problem language to stay consistent with what we're talking about, is there's a lot of folks out there who just repeat what they've heard. And if the party has said, this is the answer, if the news source that they have has said, this is the answer, they totally believe this is the answer. And we're both looking for the people who are willing to question their own assumptions and to question the assumptions of others. It may be you go do research and it turns out you're right. But you may go do research and it turns out that you're wrong. And what we're looking for are those people who are willing to go off and do a little bit of research. And that's the most important thing. So actually the distrust thing, you don't have to do it. What we're looking for is that ability to connect with people who are willing to think for themselves and do some critical reasoning.
Okay, and once the connection is made, then what?
Yeah, so once the connection is made, and if you're starting to share some ideas back and forth, the first one is, send those emails to us. So we're building a library of things that we can reference, that we can talk about in these debates. You can send it to priorities@marylandforwardparty.com or maryland@forwardparty.com. And just forward the email over to us. That helps us to put it into our database for any of that evidence that you all have found as part of those discussions. And then also that can be a transition. So if you want to bring them into a discussion, and say, hey, would you like to come and join us on our all volunteer meeting where we do a bunch of these things and really dig into the issues, or you can send them over to Bill and Bill can help connect them with a way to get involved with a group that is trying to come up with reasoned solutions that are better than the ones that we're currently experiencing.
Got you. Okay. Thanks.
All right. Any other hands? Let me double check. Okay. I do not see any other hands. Anybody have any other thoughts or anything they want to say before we wrap up? All right. And Bill, how about could you stop the recording? And let's go ahead and end that.